Okay, everyone, we're going to start at exactly 7:42 here in Denmark. Let's have a more official start. Okay. So, all seems to be going correctly. I'd like to welcome everybody here to our 11th Treatise on Cosmic Fire meeting. And, well, I can't say we've gone through the entire book meticulously, but we have done a fair job, and if you give us another 50 years, we'll be able to do it justice. And I'd like to welcome a few of our participants from abroad, in Europe, Australia, and in the United States, where most everybody is asleep. We are going to work with some of the most challenging material that the Tibetan has given us. We're familiar with the presentation of the Stanzas of Dzyan. We understand that Master Kuthumi gave these to H.P. Blavatsky, or at least he proofread them in English to make sure that they were properly presented, and then a different group of stanzas were given in a treatise on cosmic fire. These two books, we know, are intimately related, the cosmic fire being the psychological key to the secret doctrine. So we have ancient esoteric material here, which in a way has the reputation of having come from Shambhala altogether. There are always planetary records of exactly what happened in history, and the interesting thing about the Stanzas of Dzyan is that things are spoken of in the past which have not yet even happened. So it's as if the end is seen from... Yes, I knew I forgot one thing. Welcome. It's as if the end is seen from the beginning, and as if so many things that are supposed to take place in our planetary process are predicted. And yet the Stanzas of Dzyan, I mean, there are different ways of pronouncing this. The word apparently refers to the idea of dhyana, or meditation, or knowledge which is to be acquired through the deepest form of perception and meditation. But even in the Bailey books, it's not decided whether it's to be spelled D-Z-Y-A-N or D-Y-Z-A-N. But I'm simply calling it Dzyan. These stanzas are not even the oldest spiritual material that is given in the spiritual teachings. They are certainly a number of thousands of years old, but the Tibetan has given us material even from Atlantean days, which are older than the Stanzas of Dzyan, and he tells us actually far older. Probably, you've been studying this in your work. You've been meeting every couple of weeks or so, and you've probably seen that a different attitude of mind is required when dealing with these stanzas. They are not for the concrete mind. They demand an intuitive approach. You probably realize that. You say, "Oh, what does this mean?" And it is not readily available through the concrete mind. At the same time, we are very blessed with the idea that the Tibetan used the concrete mind to explain many of these stanzas without telling us that he was doing it. In other words, the entire book, A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, is in a way the exposition of the stanzas which are given in the beginning of the book. Of course, there are many more, apparently, stanzas of Dzyan. And I was reading, Anne, this document that speaks of David Regal and some of the other scholars, and there are apparently many great volumes of Tibetan literature in which the entire teaching of the Buddha is said to be contained, which have not even been translated out of the Tibetan. So we're dealing with a body of literature which is vast, and we only have a little bit. But the little bit that we have is putting a very great demand upon our interpretive resources. So we will find, and I will probably mention it often, that the better we know what the Tibetan has written in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire and all through his books, the better we know concretely what he has written, the easier it will be for us to give a reasonable interpretation of some of these stanzas of Dzyan. You can understand that for the person who knew nothing about the esoteric teaching, these stanzas would be absolutely meaningless. So if we've been good students over all these years, we ought to have at least a fighting chance of interpreting some of what is given to us. Now, I thought that the best way for us actually to meditate will be to meditate on these stanzas, because this will give us at the beginning of the day, at least for some of the stanzas, the possibility of invoking thoughts which we might not have had, coming from a higher aspect of our nature. So we will begin our meditative process as usual, and then we will go into the meditative contemplation of these stanzas. And I'm not going to do the predictable thing and simply slog through the stanzas from beginning to the end. I'm picking and choosing different stanzas, and then at the end we'll put them all in order. We don't, as a matter of fact, we don't even know whether the stanzas the Tibetan is presented with us are actually meant to be in order. When he presented the rays and the initiations, the 14 rules, he said, these rules refer to different initiations, but they're not in order, and I'm not going to tell you which ones they are. So when it comes to the stanzas, we may be dealing with very similar things. Some of them are macrocosmic, definitely, but having microcosmic applications, and some of them are definitely microcosmic in origin. They can be interpreted at many different levels. So, we focus together as we have for so many years. And we withdraw inwardly. And leave behind the normal, conventional impressions. We withdraw our attention from the outer world. And we still the body of sentiency, the astral vehicle. We stabilize the mind. We pull back and inward, and we remind ourselves that we are consciousness itself. In a sense, we are the soul in incarnation. We begin to feel the soul field, in which all of us are united. I am the soul in which all souls are fused. We are entering together the world of consciousness, the one consciousness of the group, and of the larger group. Touching each other as if we were one being, which has one consciousness. And extending our thought, our sentiency, to all humanity in all geographical locations, both in the body and out of the body. The one being, humanity. Every human being as one point within this greater being. And we recognize the barriers which, working on consciousness, make the human being think it is separate, isolated. But it is not separate or isolated. Consciousness is a fluid substance, and there is but one being experiencing through many points of sentiency and we identify as that one being. And when we think we are simply ourselves, we must think with more identification, more abstraction, and realize that we are somehow the one being, humanity. And that's just the start of it. We attune deeply in this sense of wholeness, beyond the sense of limited individuality, and we realize it is the Antakarana, the rainbow bridge, this magnetic link with the higher worlds, which is leading us into these unitive realizations, beyond the little self, even beyond the soul in the causal body. We visualize the Antakarana, the two colors of our soul and personality ray, all these blending together towards a multicolored group rainbow bridge, moving upward or inward into the cosmic ethers, the truly spiritual planes, where we can find the presence of the great souls, the members of the hierarchy, and we, in imagination moving inward, stand with them in their presence, feeling ourselves to be planetary beings, feeling somehow the blue-white light of the monad as a great crystal, a great jewel, shining into the group consciousness. We, the group, have the abstract mind and can think in planetary terms, which we will have to do when we study these stanzas. We, the group, have this inclusive love which moves beyond individual desire and is some small part of the love of the planetary logos for all aspects of his creation. we, the group, have the atmic will, the spiritual will, which is far more than the will of the little person, far more than the will of the soul center on the higher mental plane. It is a higher will related to the plan and purpose, and we can touch, as a group, just a little of it. So that we are directed by what should be, by what must be, from the perspective of our planetary purpose. And it is a great power behind us and through us and in the life of the group, and guiding every individual. And we, the group, here and more widely, share being together. We are present to each other in the one presence. Which is, for us, the presence of the God of this planet, the planetary Logos, and in Him, in that great being, we live and move and have our being. We are together and as one in that being. Thus linking up the highest and the lowest in our nature. And being completely integrated, progressively integrated into the deep, deeply spiritual plan, process, purpose. Now it is in this state of consciousness that we must approach the stanzas, which are not to be interpreted by the personality per se. The consciousness of the personality is not big enough, wide enough, deep enough. These are planetary stanzas, and even solar systemic and even cosmic. And so when we seek to gather light upon these ancient, symbolic, and yet explicit statements, we have to be together in soul. We have to be together in as deep a communion subject to triadal light as may be possible for us. We cannot force the interpretation. We can only be very sensitive, sentient, open, together. Allowing the soul-infused group mind and the triadally impressed consciousness to do its work in shedding just a little light on these ancient stanzas with which one day we will be very familiar as we go deeper and deeper into the one esoteric school, towards which we all are heading. So, with a sensitive and open consciousness, let these ancient words, rendered into poetic English by the Tibetan, seek to impress us. And then as we discuss these matters, we will have these impressions to draw upon. This is stanza 5. The moment Manvantaric, for which had waited all the triads, the hour that marked the solemn point of juncture, arrived within the scope of time. And lo, the work was done. The hour for which the 7 groups Purushik, each vibrant to the sounding of the word, seeking the adding of the power, had waited for millennia That hour passed in a flash of time, and lo, the work was done. The moment Manvantaric, for which the triads had waited, for which the 7 groups Purushik had waited for millennia, this passed in a flash of time, and lo, the work was done. So you put yourself at a point of prehistory, before there was a human kingdom on our globe. We go back millions of years. Where were we? Because we were. But where were we? A great planetary process is occurring. Are we part of it? Or were we in some other dimension and not participating directly in this process? The first degree in mighty acclamation, deeming the hour propitious, sounded the triple note in threefold reverberation. The echo reached the goal. They 3 times sent it forth. Restless, the sphere of blue felt the vibration, and answering roused herself and hastened to the call. A great sounding is going forth. A triple note sounded 3 times. A sphere of blue responds to the triple note, sounded 3 times. There is response to the sounding. The first degree has sounded. Now the second. The second, with wise insistence, hearing the first sound forth, knowing the hour had likewise come, echoed the sound or note, quadruple, 4-fold. The second echoed the sound or note, quadruple, 4-fold. This 4-fold reverberation circled the gamut of the spheres. Again, it was sent forth. 3 times the note was sounded, pealing across the heavens, like a bell sounding across the heavens. At the 3rd intoning came the answer to the call. Invocation and evocation at work. Vibrant as a key attuned, the eternal primary replied. The blue to the dense one answered and responded to the need. Three sounds have gone forth. The mighty acclamation of the first, the wise insistence of the second, and then the third. Quivering, the sphere heard the third take up the note, pealing it forth, a full-toned chord smote on the ears of the watchers of the flame. When the third took up the note, the sphere heard this, and a chord of sound was felt and heard by the watchers of the flame. All of this occurring in deep inner space. Let us say on planes higher than the ones we are accustomed to. The lords of the flame arose and prepared themselves. It was decision's hour. A choice is to be made. The 7 lords of the 7 spheres watched, breathless, the result. A great planetary event is occurring. The great Lord of Sphere the 4th awaited the oncoming. The great Lord of Sphere the 4th awaited the oncoming. As the lords of the flame arose and prepared themselves. For what are they preparing themselves? How have they been inspired? Who has inspired them? Why have they been inspired? The lower was prepared. The upper was resigned. The lower was prepared, the upper was resigned. The great 5 waited for the point of equidistant merging. The great 5 waited for the point of equidistant merging. The foundation note ascended. Deep answered unto deep. The five-fold chord awaited the response from those whose hour had come. The five-fold chord awaited the response from those whose hour had come. Dark grew the space between the spheres. Radiant, two balls became. The threefold 35, that is 3 times 35, finding the distance just or correct, flashed like a sheet of intermittent flame, and lo, the work was done. The great 5 met the 3 and 4. The great 5 met the 3 and 4. The point intermediate was achieved. The hour of sacrifice, the sacrifice of flame, arrived, and for eons hath endured. The timeless ones entered into time. The watchers began their task, and lo, the work proceeds. Stanza 5. From a period antedating the formation of Earth humanity. Occurring in dimensions which have not yet even touched the dense physical body of the planetary logos. A planetary process occurring deep in inner space. So using the Antakarana, the group Antakarana, just gather a general impression. What effect have these ancient words had upon your consciousness? It's impossible to remember them all, of course, but an impression, a meditative impression. far away it seems from our ordinary personality life, so limited by time and space and circumstance. This kind of event, making everything that we call history, history as humanity knows it, seem very small, very compressed. An event in the memory of the planetary logos, a memory which we all share in very deep layers of our psyche, but long forgotten. It has to be not personal memory, but triadal memory, monadic memory. Reminding us of what we really are, far deeper than just being a person, or even an individuality on the higher mental plane. And it is perhaps a good thing that for this class Sagittarius is rising, and the Sun is in Sagittarius, because it will help us enter into what we might call planetary mind. To think, not just as people, but as if we were integral parts of the planet, of the planetary life, of the planetary consciousness. And so when a planetary process happens, it happens to us. We are participating as members of the planet, aspects of the planetary logos. We reaffirm the presence of the spiritual hierarchy on the triadal levels. We reaffirm that part of ourselves which is triadal, planetary, of broad expanse and depth. We reaffirm our union with each other in mind and soul. We reaffirm our presence with each other, in the presence. We keep alive the link between our concrete nature and our abstract nature, so we do not fall just into concrete personhood. We keep this antichironic link, which will connect us to those worlds where these stanzas live. And we transcend our usual sense of identity, and we preserve that transcended state, remembering ourselves as planetary, systemic, and cosmic beings, in which our personhood is a temporary instrument. And in that state of mind, we will sound together the great invocation, realizing that we are invoking from the spiritual triad, we are invoking from the planetary schemes, we are ultimately invoking from the stars, welding us into a greater sense of fusion. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. So I think we realize that we cannot study these stanzas within the personal consciousness. We had better find a way to use the concrete mind, but not to be trapped by the concrete mind, because a different sense of identity is required as we enter the study. Because who's studying? You know, these are vast processes here. They are cosmic, they are systemic, they are planetary, and they are individual, but none of them is personal. Well, maybe there's one stanza. There's one stanza which seems to deal with the struggles of the person within the darkened cave. And we will, you know, we are all there in the darkened cave of consciousness relative to what can be experienced. So some of the ancient symbols, the words used for these ongoing spiritual states are delivered in these stanzas. And so this quasi-poetic language on the fourth ray will have to be translated into more fifth ray terms. So we try to know precisely what he's talking about. Now, is there anybody who would like to share any impression regarding this fifth stanza? Yes, Anne. In the beginning of the meditation, I saw the whole group. But then the different bodies became one field of energy. See the bodies. Vertical. The bodies became vertical. There was a circulation.
And the bodies disappeared.
And the bodies disappeared.
And it was still like a stream of energy.
It was like a stream of energy.
And it became a very icy blue.
Became a very icy blue. The blue which is above the red. Have you seen those paintings or computer art from Alex Gray, where you start with what looks like a human figure, but as he progresses in his renderings, they become more and more energy fields. So that's precisely what we are, and we have such a solid state of perception. We think we see concrete, separate things, but the perception like you were having, it begins all to look like a flowing energy field. And that's the ideal when we're meditating, of course, to get into that and not just sort of stay here and say, well, I am meditating. We don't want that. Okay, thank you. Other impressions? When we have a better microphone set up, one day, everyone will be heard. But right now, I have to kind of repeat what you're saying because otherwise, it won't be heard. Any other? It's daunting, isn't it? That English word which means it kind of takes your breath away when you think about what's being said here and the manner in which it is being said. How can one feel equal to interpreting this kind of thing? But we have to make a beginning, obviously. Yes. There was something with 5 in the whole thing. Yes, there was. The number 5. Now, the Tibetan always has a code. The code may be astrological, it may be numerological, it may be rheological, but underneath many of the sequences of rules and stanza is a code running. So perhaps this is not accidental, that this is the fifth stanza. Now, one thing we don't know is whether the numbering that he's giving us is exactly the way the stanzas occur, or whether it's simply the numbering that he's giving us. But it has much of the number 5 in it, for sure. That document that you gave me was very useful. We had at our conference David Regal, actually, the man who had done a lot of this interpretive work. He gave a wonderful discussion on the Kala Chakra, and there is a very a deep Tibetan repository of knowledge, which these stanzas are part of. There was a lot of linguistic work that went into it, but he established that indeed these are part of the Tibetan Buddhist canon. They are there, and it's not a fabrication. So who knows how long this has been there. It probably began in Sanskrit. Now they say it came from Shambhala. Of course, when you get with Tibetan Buddhists, their idea of Shambhala is a little different than ours. Shambhala has a king, Shambhala has a location, it's a very high place and so forth. Is this really the case? Is it some etheric city called the White Island? Are there kings of Shambhala and so forth? Anyway, they think so. When we think of Shambhala, we think of the cosmic ethers, maybe as they are precipitated into our systemic ethers. But we always think high, the logoic plane, the monadic plane, and so forth. And that's not so much in the description of Shambhala where these teachings came from. But I do think this planetary lore, this is the mind of the planetary logos, somehow establishing the history and destiny of our planet. Are there any other impressions that you would like to share? Any that you would not like to share? You can sometimes feel when the group field starts to lock in. I know we're fighting in a way. Well, there's been a lot of good things that have happened in this room, and we have had many good meditations in this room too. The other room, was maybe dedicated to meditation, but you can feel when the group locks in, and you can feel when the group is no longer just a group of people. You can feel when a presence starts to connect everybody, and when we become part of each other. which is obviously what we're looking to do. That's a fact. We are one thing. And there is one presence on this planet and beyond. And we have to realize ourselves in that presence, in that being, in that consciousness. Consciousness is a fluid substance. There are methods of Tibetan yoga where you can go right into you can flow right into the consciousness of the other person and experience as if you were that other person, because it's just one sentiency. Then let the soul realize the consciousness of God. It's the second ray technique. Something about gathering, to the, that all the light be gathered to the center and enter, and then from that point of sentient life, let the soul realize the consciousness of God. That's the second ray technique. Well, okay, we have a little adventure ahead of us. And we'll see what we can come up with, maybe 2%, 3% of the meaning. That would be a reasonable achievement, I think. Okay. All right, let's see if everybody's here. Now, I'm kind of echoing a little bit at the moment, but hopefully that will not continue for too long. We have our attendees. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to welcome Andrew from Australia, and Bio from Canada, and Carol from Australia, and Elena from Slovakia, and Irmeli from Finland, and Johanna, gosh, I forgot. Well, it looks like a Dutch name. I'm not sure where you are right now. Linda Arnelis, she's in London, I think. And Nia is in Finland, and Ron Newbold is in Australia. And some staff members, Brett, Kay, Tuya. All right, and breakfast. All right, so here's what I'm going to do, friends. Somehow I'm echoing. I hope this is not recording as such. I'm going to put everything on hold. Stay on the webinar. Don't sign off. Just leave it be. And we'll come back in about 45 minutes, refreshed and ready to tackle stanza number 5. Which I'm sure is amazingly familiar to all of us, running in our minds. Okay, so we go now, and we'll see you a little later. Yes, okay, yes, Tuya, go ahead. Okay, did you say something, Tuya?
Asking the translation. Yes, I am asking the translation. The moment Manvantarik, for which had waited all the triads.
Yeah.
Does it mean that the moment was waiting the triads?
The moment had come. The triads had been waiting for that moment. But we'll get into all that.
Okay.
Right now I'm going to rearrange the room, and thanks for being with us for this little meditation, and we will proceed with our interpretation such as it is. Okay, see everybody soon. Okay, about 45 minutes. Bye-bye.